Hello, and welcome to Awakened Aspects and my show, Aspects of Energetics, where I'm here today with Abby Lynn. And Abby, I've met Abby at conferences in the past that I've gone to, some Starseed conferences, as well as a Journey to Truth conference. And she has given some great talks that I got to listen to. So I wanted to invite her on today to talk a little bit more about her work in depth. Abby, how are you? Thank you for coming on.
I'm so well. Thank you so much for having me. And I have no idea why, but when you said the fourth episode, I just got hit with this rush of like, ooh, this is really good feminine energy. I don't know why. Is the number four feminine?
It's and 4 is a grounding. I think it's like a what is it, like a structural grounding number?
Yeah, I have no idea why. I just feel like, ooh, this is gonna be really good, strong, like talk about feminine energy, the divine feminine. So we'll see.
Into that. So that's great. I'm so curious how you got into energy work and the work you do, and if kind of give us a little bit of a backstory of how you got into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give kind of the quick run through. Um, being, tapped into what we would in our language perceive as the veil, beyond the veil, has just been something that was with me my whole life. I was always extremely curious because I was trying to find ways to explain what I was experiencing. And so I was very fortunate as well. My mother was just very spiritually, she was into into the new age movement when that started coming about. And so I was very fortunate to have my mother who had books in the house that like she had, the Celestian Prophecy. The minute that came out, boom, that was on my bookshelf, so I was able to read that. And I had an aunt that always talked about astral projection and past lives, and she had a twin in that they would astral project at nighttime and travel and go and see each other, her sister.
Oh,
And so I always love that. And I often say, us star seeds, there's somebody within our chart, right, within that family line that's going to come in and say those keywords, right, to bring in the energy to help us like kind of like come back home. And I mean, I would just sit at the kitchen table and just, when I was a kid, and she would talk about it, and she would talk about past lives, and because she would go and do past life regressions. And so I just delved so far and read so many books. I think at the age of 11 is when I started reading, what is it, like many bodies, many masters, or those souls, of Brian Weiss books. um so I just devoured it, and it all made sense to me, and everything that I read, it just aligned right, and it awakened. And I actually was talking to a girl. She was my college roommate, but I knew her in high school. And she was telling me like 2 years ago, she came here and she goes, Abby, I will never forget. She said, one of the first conversations I had with you in high school, you were sitting there talking about energy and how light is energy, and that it can move around in a room. And she said, the things that you were talking about were so mind-blowing that I have never forgotten that conversation. Which, of course, looked at her, I'm like, what?
for that, right?
That out loud. And she said, yes. She said, you always talked about the most just random aspects. And she said, but you owned it, like you embodied it. And so I have so much support from all of my friends who I grew up with when I fully embodied and shifted into this work. They all, because some people say, oh, I lost all my friends. They all think I'm crazy. All of my friends from my childhood are like, finally you're doing something with what we've been hearing you yammer on about for 30 years, 30 plus years.
Really supported in this lifetime, huh? Wow.
I am, yes. I've actually been extremely blessed with amazing supportive friends and family. My mom and dad and my sisters. But and obviously now my husband and my kids. But so what made me shift into it was I actually pursued a career in journalism and television, and I worked in that. And um, I originally went into journalism. It was because I figured, well, with a press pass, we have special privileges in order to obtain certain information. And so I generally figured, well, with a press pass, I can go in and ask questions to people that the average person cannot. I can have access to information the average person cannot. And I also wanted to bring into the mainstream the things and concepts that I knew were so real that I had been reading, for 20 plus years at that time when I was in college. So that's why I pursued journalism. But once you get into the belly of that beast, I had wanted nothing to do with it, left it. And I was raising my kids. And I actually jumped into a job, what would have been someone's dream job. I was working for a major network for a reality version of a show, but it was highlighting just amazing, amazing Americans that had taken within their job and been mavericks within it, right? So they were taking their career to the next level, and they're the innovators of our generation. So I was interviewing those people. And what I realized was I still wasn't happy. Like, I had this amazing job and I still wasn't happy because me doing this was taking me away from pursuing further research into the spiritual realm, just doing more work there. So once I left that, we lost funding for that show. It never actually came to air. But once we lost that funding, I told my husband, I said, this is it. Like, I have to pursue this because this is my soul spark. And so what I did was I gave it a year. And that year was I had been talking with my guides, like all of that was already there for me. It wasn't something I did, all the time. So I
Can
worked with my guides.
I
I'm sorry.
interrupt you really quick to ask you when you first established contact with your guides and like knew they were your guides? Because I'm so curious. Like, how long were you talking to your guides before they were like, before they were helping you make these big decisions?
In terms of actively conversing with them, where I would say something and it would instantly be there, it wasn't until I was in my early 30s. Um, Actually, it would have been my late 20s into early 30s. Before that, prior to that, it was the Abby. Like, I would hear the whispers and I knew I needed to pay attention to something. I had when I was a teenager a couple of times, just an invisible force had literally stepped in and protected me. Like, physically, my body at a point was physically moved so I would not hurt myself. And I had things come into my vehicle and take over the wheel and make me go home in a different direction. So that's when I was a teenager, that's how that looked with them. And my dreams were extremely active. So I was really paying attention to my dreams when I was a teenager. They were always giving me messages there. And so sometimes before I went to sleep, I would ask questions before I fell asleep. And they would literally, I would be in like a normal dream, and it would go black. And a guide would literally step in and I could see them and they would just deliver this message and just back up and go black. And then I'd go right back to what I was dreaming. So that's how they were working with me at that stage. When I got into my early 30s, that's when it became more physical. In regards to, I'll give you, for instance,
Saturn
I had,
return, that's where the Saturn return, is that when it all happened, kind of like around the 30-year-old, like 30 age, whenever it
yes,
starts to congeal? It starts.
yes, absolutely. It absolutely was. In my 30s is when I started getting a lot of my memories back. In terms of the life before this life. Now, all through like my teens and 20s, I was having a lot of past life memories coming in. I think when I was in college, I had already gotten enough memory and embodied, I think like over 12 lifetimes that I could remember the
Wow.
time I had entered college. So, at any rate, it got to the point where I was doing yoga, and at the end, when they say like namaste, and I felt my guide next to me like the whole class. And so I kind of giggled and I said namaste, namaste. And I said something in my head to him, and he literally flipped my ponytail. You know, so he would do that. His name is John, even that's actually not his real name, but I call him John. One time I was out running and a really, really bad storm came in, and I knew like it was like a tornado was going to come, but they said it was like 45 minutes away. So I'm like, well, I'll just go out and I can run. And I was like in this big open field on this trail, and it came in a lot faster and the whole sky got green. It really, actually, I was panicked. I was really nervous because there was lightning everywhere and I was just in this open field running on a trail. And I said, Johnny, you got to get me through this. You got to come and get this through. And I felt on the back of my arm, he came in and he literally grabbed my arm and he held it there. And I just ran as fast as I could. And he never let go of that grip until I got to the point where I could see my car. And then it just went and just left.
Wow. So it was just John there with you that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Always there with you, or is this like then you have other guys that come in at different times?
Well, we all have multiple guides. So, but okay. So we have our main guide. I always call them like your main squeeze, right? We have our main guide, but sometimes I have seen people have two main guides. And these would be what you would call like your ride or dies, right? I mean, they are with you at all times from the time you even conceive of this life. And they're there every step of the way. They know absolutely every single thing about you. And these guides have done so many lifetimes with you. So sometimes people look at guides and they think, oh, they're just light beings. They just live in that realm. No, they have had multiple lifetimes in physical embodiment. They have just for this lifetime while you're here chosen to stay on that side and be your best friend from there. But they have done so many lifetimes with you in such a close capacity. And oftentimes they could be, like a brother or sister, but more than not, they are like, imagine your bestest friend, your soul sister that you have here. It's that level. And so, and what they've explained to me is the reason why it's so important that they have done physical lifetimes with you is they understand and can relate better to how you as the soul light being shifts and changes once you embody a physical vessel, because there is, like, as you go through that amnesia state. And so they can have empathy for what it feels like to be here and to be in other areas too. So those are your main ride or dies. And then we have like your adventure guide, your learning guide, your teaching guide. I actually had one. I've only met them once with somebody, but it's called a time guide. I've never even heard of a time guide, but essentially they work along your timeline.
Hmm.
And they worked with you before you came here as to like when you're going to shift and when things were going to line up here and there. So
Interesting. So do you notice they ever kind of like leave forever? And it's like almost like they're gone and then they never come back.
Um, no, no. So any form that we would feel that they're gone forever, that's just us thinking that they're always there. Now they will back further away. So, like for instance, your adventure guide, he's not always gonna. He's there when you're ready to make a really big change in your life, and he'll come in and he'll work with your main guide to help you go through, anytime you make a move or you go on a huge vacation or, anything that would bring. So like your venture guide helps you like bring a spark of excitement into you and anything that changes. So they work along in tandem with your main guide.
Interesting, because I had a huge Kundalini type of spark in 2017 after the eclipse that happened then, the American eclipse, and it kind of hit my chart directly because I'm a Leo and I have all those planets in Leo, and it was in Leo. Anyway, so I made this huge shift and change, and I decided to move back to my childhood or my hometown, which I never thought I would ever. So, and then I brought my daughter, and I remember, taking this photo. I took this photo of my daughter and I was wearing sunglasses. And then in the photo, in my sunglasses, I saw this giant man. It was like a giant man standing next to me. And it was like, I remember after, like during that time, I had immense strength to make this huge shift and change in my life that kind of came with a lot of crazy, interesting times. It was like in my late 30s, and it's a time where you go through a Pluto square and all this stuff, and it's like it's very catalyzed in your life. But I had all this energy, and I felt like that guide was with me in a way, almost making it happen with me. And I could sense that was my guide. He was like this giant, giant man. He was very, very tall, like probably
Yeah.
9 to 10 feet tall. I don't know if
Yeah.
that sounds like an adventure guide or what kind of guide that was. But I don't know. I've always kind of wanted to know how to connect with my guides more. And it would just get these little glimpses like that, that it was almost like these little little breadcrumbs here and there, and I try to put it together to be like, okay, and then sense into the energies that were helping me. Um,
Yeah.
I sit and meditate, try to connect to my guides, and I don't really know. I don't get anything. And it's like I've tried for years and years and years and years. I think when I first started connecting to the Pleiadians, I was like in my 20s, I think, in my 20s, and I would just kind of like sit and meditate, and then I would get this rush of loving energy. And I think that's when I first started um, understanding what the Pleiadians were. And then I started like researching all about the Pleiadians and that kind of thing. It was long ago, and I think they were one of the first galactic guides, maybe that came in. I think that happens for a lot of people. One of the first galactic guides that come in are the Pleiadians, right? Does that sound
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
Or
it
do
just
you,
depends. It just everyone's gonna have a different journey. So there's no, one shape fits all.
when did you first sense your galactic kind of guidance, your galactic council, and your galactic connection come in?
Well, my first experiences started when I was 3.
Oh,
And
galactic. Oh,
yeah,
wow.
yeah, yeah. And so every encounter with them up until I was about 5 was all about teaching.
Well,
It
tell us
was
about that one. What happened when you were 3?
um it was they just came and essentially, took me up, and I did talk to my parents about it a little bit. And it was just very.
I'm so curious. What did they take you and do? Where did you go up to the ship?
Yeah, yeah, but it was always a place of allowing me to see. So I was just looking out a lot and looking at the universe. And then I remember being in like a classroom type of setting, and it was a board, and they were just showing different moons, different planets, and again, like, I don't remember it verbatim. It's just it was an essence. I understood the grasp of what I was doing there, but everything, it was not, it was never in a stance of, we're showing this because you have no idea. It was always a place of, you need to remember who you are. You need to remember where you came from. It's always, you need to remember who you are. And I also knew that I knew everyone up there. Like, it just felt like family. It did. It was very loving. I was very excited to go. I never knew when it was going to happen again, but I was always very excited, and I looked forward to it. And then something shifted about the age of 6 and 7, where then it became very scary, and I was terrified, and I didn't want anything to come anymore. So something drastic shifted.
Interesting. Okay. Do you
Yeah.
know where they were from? Or like when you were 3 and you're younger, did they identify themselves? Do you have any idea, or did your mom help you identify them? Okay. Okay.
No.
You said they were more loving and caring, and then it turned out then later it turned out others maybe also.
Something else totally got involved.
Yeah. And I know, 'cause, we met at the Journey of Truth conference, and we're both familiar with the Secret Space program and all of that come in and kind of try to infiltrate different with programs and different you know super soldiers, whatever they call them, and just people who are very attuned and have these skills, right? And then they kind of come in and try to use those skills for their various nefarious programs. Do you think it had anything to do with that, maybe?
Yeah, when I was younger, I didn't know this. I just knew it was really scary, and I had a lot of recurring nightmare dreams, and it was the same exact scenario played over and over and over again, which I now know enough that what I was having were abduction, of just being outside. I lived in the woods. I lived up in the Appalachians, and I would be outside in my neighborhood, like, because everyone had a house, but we all had land. And again, it was just, I mean, it was hills, it was up and down, and I would play down in the creeks and in the woods. So I was very familiar with the landscape. Because again, I'm, tail end of a Gen Xer. So our parents just said, get out and go play all day. And so I literally lived in those woods. And the nightmare was, I was running in the woods, and something was up, way, way, way up in the sky, looking for me. And I just spent the whole dream hiding, like trying to find places to hide, like bearing leaves over me so they couldn't see me. Or the next dream, like when I had it again, because they would always find me in the leaves. I would like try to shove my I would go down into the creek in the water and try to like get underneath the rocks because I would go into the rocks and look for salamanders, you know, when I would out there play. And so I knew that you could get ledge up underneath of them. So I would try to like dig out the dirt and go under the rocks so they couldn't play. So it was just those type of nightmares. And I now know those were very real. I actually was doing that.
Wow. So you think it was like a holographic overlay on your life, or do you think it was, that you were dreaming because it was really happening, and then you were getting these dreams to help you understand what was happening in your everyday?
Well, yeah. No, I actually think I was physically outside running.
Oh, okay.
I
And
think I
then
was
you time
actually
lapse and
outside.
that you just
And then
disappear.
they always got me. So I did a session with Mary Rodwell because I did finally want, because there was such different feelings, because half of it was really positive and good and half of it was really bad. And I had gotten, when in my 30s, again, it's like that remembrance, right? And there was something about even just if you had physical abuse in this lifetime, there's something about the 30s that it just resurfaces. And any form of trauma resurfaces in your 30s that you've repressed from childhood. And I actually, it came back from somebody's profile picture on Facebook. So I was in a group and this person was started to post, and I clicked on their profile picture because something about, so like when I read things, I'm not really reading them, and especially someone new, I'm feeling their energy, right? And I'm like, ooh, who, like I was attracted to that energy. And so I clicked on it, looked at his profile. And once I saw that, it was just, so for me, when memories, like especially going to Akashic, it's like going like this, I do this, right? It's like I'm getting sucked back into this moment, and my whole surroundings is that again. And I saw myself being extremely small, toddler, I mean, like 5, 6, and very crisp white. Everything was white. I couldn't even see corners around the room, but it was just so crisp white and it was so bright. And everybody, we were all wearing white clothes. And there were these kids and they were sitting on the ground, and I was standing, but some of these kids were crying and they were all looking around, and some of them were only 3. I mean, they were little, and they were all looking around, obviously like deer in headlights. Everyone was in a state of shock almost. And some of the kids started to kind of cry because were getting panicky. And I just remember looking around and assessing. I'm kind of the oldest, like I'm one of the oldest ones here, and they're so little, and there's no mom and dads, like none of, where are their mom and dads? My thought was, I'm going to be the mom. I'll be their mom. Like I'll be like the adult in charge then. And I looked down at this little boy, and he was younger than me. And I just instantly connected into him, and I became so protective of him. And I said, like, you're going to be okay. And I heard in my head, super psychic kids. And then that was my scene. And then the very next scene that I went to was being in my early 20s. I looked to be like 21, and he looked to be about 19. And we had all of this gear on, and we were we weren't here. We weren't here at all. Because I have no idea where this landscape was, but we had what would be military gear on. And I was against this rocky wall here, and we were all in black, and it was very black. It was all like black lava, it was just black rocks. And I looked over at him, and I had a weapon. I have no idea what I was holding, but I looked at him and I said, "Are you ready?" And he said, I've got it. And we put down our shields, and then we went. And my thought was, I have to make sure that nothing happens to him. Like I had no concern for myself. It was, I have to protect my little brother. I generally did look at him as my little brother. And anyway, all of this came from a Facebook profile.
Okay. Okay.
and
So
this and this
it was after your session with Mary Rodwell, and then they just kind of opened.
no,
No,
no, no, no, no, no. I finally got, I'm sorry, I really jumped on that one. I finally went to Mary years later.
after that kind of happened to you.
Yeah, I went to Mary like 3 years after that.
Okay. Oh,
And
what
yeah,
was that person on Facebook to you? Was it just a stranger or?
Yeah, I don't know them, and they live on the other side of the world, but they have the same exact abilities that I do.
Okay. Okay, interesting. So do you think then you were one of those psychic kids then in the beginning that kind of
Yeah.
like, okay. And then you were together maybe with him and then you guys were taken into a program together perhaps? Is that
Mhm. Yeah.
so this is interesting because I feel like this happens a lot to a lot of us that are on this path, and we kind of don't know. And especially someone like you, it doesn't seem like you've had trauma in your life. Like you've been very supported through your family. You hear that of a lot of star seeds or people in this on this path. They had a lot of trauma in their life, and then people just kind of blame their trauma for a lot of the things that are like, oh, they're escaping through these various imaginations, right? Which imagination, as we know, is really powerful in any way, but people kind of use it as a form of a put down. So it's your imagination, you're escaping your traumatic reality, but
Yeah.
you're not that. So it's interesting because you're really supported, and so the fact that you've had these experiences, it really um kind of puts you in a different category, I think, to me, as like people are not just kind of like coming out of trauma and dealing with it this way. It's really, you really have like such a past and multiple dimensional experience all at once simultaneously,
Mhm.
that you're recounting, and you're bringing in a lot of the various dimensional aspects of yourself into this physical, because you've been able to root so well with, I think, your family being so um supportive. So because you've been so rooted, it makes sense that you bring in more of yourself and have those experiences so early on, and then throughout your life so fluidly.
Mhm.
So I know this is kind of because I stopped you before and you're about to like tell your husband, okay, I'm done. I need to do this work. It was around your Saturn return. So like that's when you started, your whole start. Like how did you start, working? Did you get trained in Reiki like a lot of people, or did you decide to get trained in something else? And how did that all kind of
No, I did what pretty much everybody does. So so what I did was I told spirit that I will say yes to everything that makes my soul spark, right? Everything that kind of makes me that, like inner giddy. I'm going to say yes to, no matter how terrified or uncomfortable it makes me. I will push myself lovingly into it, right? And so the very next day I was scrolling on Facebook like we all do, and an ad popped up for Reiki level 1. And I had heard of Reiki, and one of my college friends, she, wrote me, she's like, "Oh my God, Abby, like this is so you need to do this, blah, 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 blah." And that was years prior. I'm like, okay, whatever. So Reiki popped up, and I got excited when I saw it. So I literally, I go, look, I just did it. And I shouted to my husband, I go, hey, I'm going to take Reiki 1. I'm going to train. He said, sweet, go. And I loved it. And I quickly did Reiki 2. And after that, I literally got cracked wide open,
understand?
completely cracked wide open. Everything came in very fast and very furious. So I went from, yes, I had experiences. Yes, I had, spirit, and my daughter's a very gifted medium. All my kids are tapped in, but very easily managing. I have galactics and I have spirit, but I really only have galactics like visiting me in my sleep. It's very manageable, and then spirit. And then after Reiki 2, it was boom. Oh, okay. I'm now talking. What? I'm talking to dragons now. Who? Wait, what is this being? What are you? You're an Andromedan. Okay, you're an Andromedan, and I can talk to Andromedans now. Like it was just every single level, and it was physically exhausting for my body, because again, you get up very fast in order to see them, because I could hold them in for a conversation, and they were, I could see them walking in my room. So it's not, I mean, oh, granted it was like a hologram, but I could see them. They, it wasn't in my mind. They were like responding and moving within my environment, and to be able to hold that level of frequency to keep that communication is really hard on the physical body. And I don't think a lot of people realize how taxing even just a mediumship read is on the physical body.
Do you think you were actually doing Reiki at that point, or you were just doing something else? Like, it wasn't really Reiki anymore?
Yeah, I honestly I don't really call what I do Reiki anymore.
I
That's
feel
why I
like
just say
it's like a gateway drug for us.
that's what I always say. I literally always say that exact word. I said gateway is the gateway drug into like everything. It truly, truly is.
Yeah, that happened
Um,
to me around the same age too. I was like, well, I was in my late 20s and I did Reiki level 1 and 2. I didn't feel anything. It was when I went into the Reiki 3 mastership. Okay, this is weird. But I still like couldn't really sense the energy or see anything like you do. But things just started happening in my life. Like, just things would just happen out of nowhere. People would pop up and they would like you feel like you know them, or like, things would happen like your job would change, or like it would just happen. Like things would happen without having to actually take the effort to make it actually happen. So that's what I figured it was. There was something happening there, or something
yeah.
else.
I actually got really negative. I had negative things start to happen to me when I opened up.
Yeah, that
So
happens too. It's part of the catalyst, right?
right? Yeah, they don't want you embodying this. And so yeah, it was interesting because I got cracked wide open the minute we moved into this one house, not where I'm at right now. And everything happened in that 3 years that we are in that house of just like, I guess we're going to call it the dark night of the soul. I don't know. I don't know if I want to claim that, but um, yeah. And that house happened to have this beautiful old oak right outside of it. And it was wrapped in a form of it wasn't a moss, it was almost like a it's like but it's something it vines and it wraps around. But one of the somebody walked by and he said, oh, you have that growing on your tree. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know what that is. And okay, and so first off, the number of our house was Mary Magdalene's number,
Which is
and
that?
153. Somebody there, they said, oh, that's Mary Magdalene's number. And the moss it wasn't a moss, it was an evergreen, like a moss, a viney thing growing around it. They said, well, the old wives tale is they call it Jesus vine.
Interesting. No
And they
one.
yeah, and they said whenever that grows around a tree, that tree is heavily protected, divine, like it's divinely protected tree. And this tree had so like it had very strong fairy energy all around it. And it wasn't just like a tree in the backyard. This tree was like resting up against my house, and it was huge. It spanned the entire side of my house, massively huge. And I just found that to be not a coincidence that we were living in a house that was surrounded and protected by this tree and all of this beautiful divine energy.
Yeah. Is that
Wow.
when you started doing your work then in that house, or okay?
Yep. Yep. That's when I started. Because when I was working towards getting my Reiki master and all these, like I worked it took me a year to get them out of master. It kind of drives me insane. I've been seeing these ads where people are like, go from Reiki 1 to Reiki master in 30 days. I'm like, what? It takes like 21 days after each attunement just to allow the body to like accept and align that. And then on top of, then you have to practice and actually use it. So I spent a whole year focused just on that. And so for 2 years total, I was doing all this work out of that house and all for free because it was me practicing and working on my skill and opening up. But yeah, my office was to the point where when you walked in, it was like you just walked into a completely different world, because it does. And I had clients that would walk that threshold and they'd be like, whoa, what just happened there? Oh my goodness. Because you grit it and you protect it. And when so much higher vibrational energy has been in a space, the body just feels it when you walk in.
Yeah, it's really interesting how important a space is to this work. Just, the level of embodiment. Like I know I moved to a new house the beginning of 2021, and it was like a new construction house, and it's very, very cold.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of nature around, which I'm not into. I feel like we need to leave and move somewhere where I used to live, which we used to live in Asheville, which was very beautiful. When I lived in Asheville, North Carolina, I was so open and was constantly receiving downloads. And
Mhm.
it's such a stark difference between that. And it is so interesting how your environment and even the nature around you has a huge effect on, you know, the way that we contact, communicate, and tune in with our
Absolutely.
with this kind of etheric work, I guess. The more nature, the more we could tune in, which is so interesting. Yeah,
Mhm.
that is really interesting. So, so is your office then, you know, situated, you know, within more nature than now, or how do you?
Well, my office now is downtown Charleston. No, so there's not a lot of nature down there, but it's surrounded by water.
Oh, interesting.
And
Oh,
yep, and it's just one of the oldest cities in America, so there's so much energy.
yeah, there's a lot of history.
And the woman who used to have the office, she did the same work. She's a psychic medium, and so she worked there for almost 2 years. She had all of that energy
Oh,
there, and so then I stepped in. It just the space was very welcoming. It's a 250-year-old house that they converted into offices.
oh, wow. 250. Wow. So there is a lot of energy there, which brings me to like the interesting connection that you have with, I don't want your computer to shut down. I don't want to say the W word, but you have some podcasts where you've done interviews on, you know, the witches. How did you feel like this connection came in, and how do you feel connected to that history?
Well, we discussed the past lives. I've always known that I was beheaded. Um because and one of my actually acquaintances here in Charleston, she was very important along my journey. She was holding monthly like moon gatherings, but what we would do is she was a quantum healer, and so we would all come together and then she would take us through a meditation. And so I had some beautiful journeys there with her. But at any rate, I was talking to her one evening and I said, "Yeah, I've always had these moles when I was a kid. I always loved them because I said they made a necklace, like, and I would show like my moles I would have, and they've actually all pretty much faded away. They're all gone
Wow.
now, but they were very prominent. And I kind of showed it to her and she goes, "You know that's a beheading necklace." She said people who have been beheaded will grow like a ring of moles around their necks.
Gosh. Wow.
I had never heard of that.
Interesting.
And so she goes, "Yeah, you've definitely been beheaded." And she had not known that I had known that. And so and then somebody else did a reading for me, and she saw more of that. Like I just knew that I had been beheaded, and I knew it was for witchcraft because I saw my dress, I saw everything, and the crowd was all out there. And then when the Notre Dame burnt down that day, it was I love history and I especially love historical buildings, and I think that they should always be honored and don't ever tear them down because it's still a piece of our story. So it was interesting when the Notre Dame was burning that day and I saw it, my higher self literally said, "Burn, baby, burn."
Ew. I was like, yes. I
Yeah. And
was like,
and
not sure. I was embarrassed to say that to people. I'm like, oh my God.
yeah. So literally, I mean, and literally, and this was during that period where I was like being cracked wide open, right? And so my husband, I love this man. He gives me so much space and he never questions and he never makes fun of. And so I was on the car seeing this and looked at him. I go, "I need to go home. I need to run." So my running is my meditation. I need to like run on this and figure out why I'm excited because the Abbey, would be devastated. And I said, "I'm really happy that this is happening and I don't know why." So the minute I started my meditation and my run, my higher self and my guide John came in and they said, "Well, you were persecuted there." And it's like I got a quick flash of being in it for a trial. And I know it was that. And so my one friend, she's a very, very gifted reader, and she tapped into that and she saw this whole lifetime. And I was friends with somebody who is very well known on a global historical route. I'm not going to say any names, but he was one of my friends, and he knew how to kind of hide his prophecies. Well, I was more vocal. and I didn't really care. And I lived out in kind of like the wooded area, and really what I was I would help him come up with fancy words to hide some prophecies, which when I was a kid and growing up, I would do this all the time with my friends. I
Interesting.
would like come up with these riddles, and I'd be like, what am I talking about? And I would loved it because I could never figure it out. So I like to come up with parable, at any rate, so, and he always said, like, you need to be careful. Like, they're going to get you at some point. And I'm like, I don't care, they're never going to get me. Well, this very wealthy man took notice of me, and I rejected him and cut his face. And so he just said I was a witch. And that's why I got beheaded at Notre Dame.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a terrible way to.
And that's and just knowing that, and when I started doing more research, so many, and there's a witch here in Charleston. Her story was she was having she was a servant, and the man who lived in a beautiful home downtown Charleston, lots of money, was having an affair with her. And she threatened to tell his wife, I'm your mistress, I'm going to tell her. And so what did he do? He turned her in for witchcraft. She's the only person who died of witchcraft, and all of it was because she was having an affair with him, and she threatened to tell his wife. And that is at the root of a lot of what was going on in Europe. And I mean, I know that doesn't, some of it might fit for Salem witch trials, but a lot of Europe and here, it's just how men covered up. She bewitched me. She bewitched me.
Interesting. That's where that phrase came from. It
Mhm.
is an interesting connection between witches and sexual energy. And I
Yeah.
don't know, where that originated or anything like that, but there's always been some kind of.
So one of the women that I researched over in Europe, she was hanged, um, because she was a healer, and her specialty, she created this special salve that helped with blood wounds for bruising. And so the women of that village would go to her because their husbands were beating them up and they had bruises on their body. And so they put the salves on to help it heal faster so they didn't look all bruised up going amongst the village. Well, the husbands figured, I mean, the men figured out what this woman was doing, and their fear of this one woman knows that all of who the abusers are in our town. So they hanged her for witchcraft.
Oh, wow. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never had a recount of being hung as a witch or being tried as a witch, but I definitely have had lifetimes as different in the Crusades and being killed there and sacrificed, and also being part of a Gnostic tribe and being sacrificed there. But it's interesting how so many are sacrificed in history based on just what they know. And that's I mean, it still holds true today, except today you get social sacrifice, or you get social, you get slashed socially, and then that can affect your.
Yeah, and that, I kind of cover that a bit in the podcast. It's still happening today. It's just in a different way. You're just getting censored, you're getting demonetized. Like Journey to Truth lost their entire YouTube channel. I mean, it's the same. It's still going on. We are afraid of people speaking truth, of people even having the audacity to think in a different way. And yeah, it's just the fear of divergence.
Yeah. Yeah, or even in a job, or work, I think people sometimes can also be sacrificed based on maybe what they know, what's happening on the organization. That could be suspect or whatever. So it is interesting. And then we somehow we read our history story that has been completely turned on its head and given us the exact opposite of what actually occurred, so that we're led to believe something completely else, something else, which is a world full of delusion. Yet some of us, like yourself, who can see things as they are some of us are seen as delusional. So it is a really interesting upside down inverted world that we live in. So yeah, that is interesting. The history of a witch. So fascinating.
I get that a lot when people are, especially people if they're outside of our world, and if they ask me what I do, or the things that I know, and I'm explaining to them, this the response I get every single time is they sit back and they said, Abby, if I had probably heard this from anybody else, I would think that you are insane. They said, but you have such conviction, and I know, like, you're so grounded that I have to believe what you're saying is real.
Yeah.
And so I get that a lot.
That makes a lot of sense, because I don't tell a lot of people because I live in a smaller town, um,
Yeah.
a little bit more conservative area, and I don't tell people what I do. I don't tell people I do astrology and hypnotherapy. When they ask me what I do, like my daughter's teachers, for instance, they ask what I do. I'm like, oh, I do coaching. I do therapy and coaching, and they're like, okay. And then my daughter asked me, she's like, mom, I know that you don't like me to tell everyone that you're an astrologer and a hypnotherapist, but what do you want me to tell people? I'm like, oh no, now I'm teaching my daughter to, like, present herself as a way to be accepted by society. I'm like, okay, well, I'm like, you could just tell them what I do. And she's like, what do you tell them right now? She's like, well, I just tell people that you make things. I'm like, okay, well, that's fair enough. They're going to want to know more. And it is hard because there's was one level, like, I don't want to feel like I'm hiding myself and teaching my daughter to hide herself, but another level, it's like we have to have discretion because we still live in that kind of world where we don't physically hang people, but we definitely ostracize them, or we judge them, or we just don't give them any credit after we realize that they're not science based or backed. And it's like, what is science? Science is nothing but black magic half the time anyway. So so we don't even realize that.
I
So
know it's absolutely astounding. And I love that meme that went around. They were showing, like, oh, you don't believe in crystals and you think they're all dark magic, then you should probably get rid of your cell phone.
oh yeah, there's another level, right?
You think, like, powers of technology, right? Yeah, my kids, when I first started really stepping in to do this work, my guides, actually, multiple, sometimes they will come in as a group and it's a collective message, and that's when I absolutely know, like, ooh, I need to listen to this. But they said
The
that
whole council comes in, they're like, okay, you ready? We're all here.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like, I mean, because they know me, right? They probably realize if she just hears it from one of us, she's not going to take it as seriously. She'd be like, whatever. But all of us, the whole brigade comes in unison.
Like a
But
tornado.
yeah, so they all came in and they said you have to claim this. When somebody asks you what you do, you have to tell them. And they said it's not because they need to know, it's because you need to hear yourself claim it. And they said the more that you do, every time that you put that out and you make that declarative statement, I am blah 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 blah, they said you're going to anchor, it's going to anchor you within my alignment even more, and you're going to more fully embody this. So I'm like, oh, I gotta tell everybody. And so at the beginning, I was nervous, I was a little scared, but I also knew I had to do it. Free will still, but um, and now I'm excited to tell people. I'm actually excited because more cases than not, people are actually very intrigued. They're very interested, and they think it's cool as shit. The What makes me excited, I like to see the random squirmers. I actually like seeing people get visually uncomfortable. I do, and it's not like, I'm not doing that in a mean way,
Oh, it makes
but
sense.
like, I'll call them out. I'll call them out on that, and I go, I can tell that makes you a little uncomfortable. Do you have any questions? Like, I'm more than happy to explain to you, because I'm sure that sounds a little scary, but we don't really know what that means. So then I'm able to teach. And so, yeah.
So at this point, like, what do you tell people is your work in, like, when you introduce yourself to, I don't know, like a parent of your friend, right?
Well, I introduced myself to my waiter 2 days ago on my birthday. And within 3 minutes, he knew I told him what I do. I am a sound and energy healer, and I'm a medium.
Okay.
I'm an intuitive medium.
So
Yeah.
then, so at this point, because you've claimed it and you're embodied,
Mhm.
more so because when you claim it, you become more embodied. Now you're able to provide that space to others. So, like, so tell us a little bit about what you offer others in your work. Do you teach classes now more, or do you do more session work, or how do you prefer working these days now?
Um, I am, almost 2 years ago, my guides really came in, and it honestly, it really wasn't my like John, those guides. These were my angelics really came in, this full light little light beings. They kind of look like, the movie Cocoon. There's some like glowy bodies. Um, but they've been working with me with sound. So, and just the message, like it's all about sound, it's all about sound, all about sound. So, I'm very, if you want to get into like my excited little kid inner child, that space with me, it's all about my toning and sound. Because I channel there, it's light language. That is the full embodiment of another aspect of myself. So that's what I'm really passionate and excited to do. And it took me, that was probably my biggest hurdle of really being uncomfortable. So I finally just started posting like 6 weeks ago, light language and some of my toning online. That was a huge like, to do that. Because I think that some people, if they hear light language, they they don't understand why their body is processing it in the way that it does.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different theories when it comes to light language and who you're channeling. And then there's like people that don't like fairies, and there are people that don't like fae, and then there's people that do like that, and then just don't understand. So it is interesting. So when you do light language, do you think it communicates with these kinds of other realms? And then you're bringing in information from those realms.
Yes. Yes, it's a form of them being able to come in and the language will shift. So it's light language is a very blanketed term. It actually, I mean, in all reality, it frustrates me sometimes that we just call it light language. Because it's the equivalent of taking every language that's spoken on this planet and just saying they're speaking. Because there's so many different dialects and it is the different languages coming in and very different energies. And that's why I say I channel because and if you hear it, you can, especially if I'm in that, I call it like when I'm in the pocket, um, it will shift. And Anne Marie and I were talking about this, the brief moments that it is spoken in between the toning, it's speaking because that language that you're speaking it's like it's building in the structure for the next layer of energy to come in. So it's like when you're speaking, what it is like, that speaking is putting down the 2x4s of a house before you're ready to come in and bring in healing for a section. And so that's kind of a visually what it feels like when I'm in there. But you can, if you hear it, you can hear and feel a whole different group of energy will come in. And the people who have experienced, they can feel the shift. Absolutely. And it's always in a space of healing. It's always in a space of how can I help the people here? And the thing that I love the most, I mean, when you're laying there, you're just hearing the light language at the end. No matter who I'm working with, they always end it because I can hear the translation in my head. They have so much gratitude that they have been given the opportunity to give. And they just do this like, thank you so much. Thank you so much for allowing us to give this to you, for allowing like to be receptive of this healing. And they do, it's like their shoulders go down and they're just doing that. They do this a lot. Like, thank you so much. They're almost like, it's just service to others on such a deep, deep place that humans can't even comprehend.
You have a very strong voice. Is that you that has that you did the music at the beginning of your witch podcast series? You do kind of sound the voice. Yeah, it's very powerful. Yeah, definitely powerful voice.
Yeah, that came channeled into me in the shower, that whole song, the tone and the song. And I mean, some of the lyrics I wrote later, but the tune of it, the flow of it, and especially the like you they came to see me hang, they came to watch me hang, they came to light the flame, like that came so powerful. Um the first time it blew out my vocal cords for 2 days.
Oh wow. You know, it's interesting on your astrology chart. I look at the planet that just comes before the moon when we're born, and the planet right after the moon, and it tells us what we initiated in many past lifetimes, um,
Yeah.
prior lifetimes, and Venus came right before the moon. So it means that you've initiated a past lifetimes of Venus. And Venus is actually the planet of the divine feminine, but also of the voice. So it has Venus is about the throat and the voice and what we can bring through materially into this material realm. Also our socializations and those around us. So like you've in past lifetimes you've been someone who voiced things and you've been a powerful voice, and even in Pisces it was a powerful voice for the divine, because Pisces is the sign of the divine and the other realms. So interesting, and this lifetime you're here to initiate the sun, which is interesting because the sun is a lot more about our community of people, all of us, and as a collective, and how we kind of all operate together and work together. So that's pretty cool. So it's like you're going to be connecting people with your voice in a way too, which makes sense. So I know I just kind of had to tell you about that because I love tracking that, and I think that's really interesting that you're coming deeply into your voice now, and that awareness of how powerful it is that you have that.
Thank you so much for giving that validation. I genuinely appreciate that. When you were saying that, I was kind of like nodding, like, mm-hmm. So, what started to happen lately in my toning when I'm working on a healing is I literally am seeing myself morph into a prior version of myself. And I know, like, I have done this for like thousands of years, and like I'm just using toning for healing. And like I was talking to my husband, my kids, like, you should always do the things that don't feel like work, right? Because it just comes so naturally. It's not work. And channeling the toning and the singing and the frequency, it's not work for me. It feels so good. And it flows so naturally, and it makes me feel better. And so there, it's like, yes, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I know there's a lot more, right? But this is in alignment, and it's because I've done it so often. The things that we find easy, the reason why they're easy is because we've mastered it for thousands of years somewhere else.
Yeah, yeah, and we do have so many aspects of ourselves out there that we need to embody and bring in. The more we embody, the more we bring in, the more we're able to bring back our abilities and our talents and everything, and to use them in this lifetime, which we have so much ability and capacity to really embody so many lifetimes in this time at this time, and to
No.
embrace so and like yeah, it's just bringing so much in this lifetime, which is so cool and powerful. I think that's why a lot of us chose to come in right now. So so you do toning work and sound healing, sound work now. Do you do that for groups and groups of people then? Is that how
Yeah,
you
I can do it for groups. I can do it individually. I mean, individually, it's going to be tuned just for you, exactly what your energy is going to be needing. And I can do that in person or over Zoom. It's not that I can, I do that. But then I also do it for groups. So I've done it for groups anywhere from 5 people up to 50 people.
so tell us a little bit about your upcoming trip then to Egypt, and are you planning to do some of that toning and sound work with them? Tell us a bit more about how, because I'm so curious. You have a trip planned for Egypt next year, which is right. It's like it's a whole year, but at the same time, it's like people need time to plan for those kind of like very distant um,
Yeah.
trips. So tell us a little bit how you came into that. I know I'm jumping around, but I just want to make sure
No, 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 it's fine. No, it's fine. Yeah. So, interesting. Another thing, this is with my guides. So, I did a small little toning that got recorded, and that kind of got shared around to some people. And through that, I was invited to go to a conference up in Chicago, and it was a pyramid conference. Now, they didn't cover any of my expenses or travel. It was just for me to go and do it. So it was expensive and it cost me money. But I was debating whether to go and do it or not. But my guide came through very strongly. And he said, there's a reason why you are going to do this. There is somebody that is going to be there to hear your toning. So just took leap of faith, bought the ticket, went, did it. It was a 25-minute channeling for their opening ceremony for this conference. And immediately after, somebody approached me. A man came up and he said, can I give you a hug? That was incredible. And afterwards, he said, I don't know what you just did, but I was jet lagged. I just flew in. I was getting ready to go back to my hotel to sleep for the night because he was speaking the next day. He was one of the keynote speakers. And he said, but now I am filled with energy. I feel so amazing. And he said, we are going to work together. So long story short, his name is Maher, and he runs and leads for the past 30 years tours at all the sacred sites in the world. And he's an Egyptologist, and he has done tours of the pyramids at all the sacred sites. And so he has invited me to come, and his company organizes everything. He has all of the connections to get us in. And it is a sound activation. It's 14 days of going, and we're going to be singing and chanting and toning. It's all about healing. It's activating yourself through these sounds, these tones. And me being the channel, I'm just going to channel in all of the energy that is there. I have already worked. I have Toth has worked through me a number of times for people. I've worked with him, and Anubis has worked with me. And I am extremely, extremely aware of a lifetime. I'm not going to say the name because I just don't feel like people rolling their eyes about it. In Egypt. So,
Yeah. People have
yeah,
people have their definitely perceptions about Egypt too, and a lot of that went on there. Is it hard? I mean, how did you feel when you channeled out Thoth? Because that's a very powerful being that can sometimes feel a little darker.
no,
And
I loved, I
yeah.
loved him. He felt like a best friend.
Oh wow.
He
Okay.
just felt like, yeah, he just felt like a best friend. He came in and he was teaching me
Yeah.
some,
The
yeah,
teacher, definitely.
yeah, yeah. He came in and he was teaching me, but it very, very much so felt like I was just talking to a colleague.
Oh
So,
wow. But
yeah,
before you're like, oh, it's you again. Hey.
yeah, yeah, I don't know. He just felt very familiar. Um, and and I will say, the like when I talk about, oh, I talk with dragons and I've talked with Sasquatch, and I've talked with different beings. I don't do any of it to seem like, oh, she thinks she's so cool, like, oh, she's just, because whenever a new being comes in, I always ask them, how am I able to talk to you? How am I able to see? How are we able to have this connection right now? Because I want to know. And I do question them. Like, I'm not just some loosey goosey out in the wind. I have extremely strict boundaries. I have extremely strict ethics. I question and vet strongly. So I am just, I
Has
can
there,
sound.
has there ever been a being that wants to channel through you and you're like, no?
There has been a being that has come into my room and wanted to interface with me.
Okay.
And I have said, F off. Absolutely not. Yeah. And there have been beings,
What was
absolutely,
that
that
deciding factor for you?
do I?
What was the deciding factor for you?
Oh, how I felt.
Okay.
Oh yeah, how they made me feel. Yeah, no, I could just, and And especially when I'm around, if an energy is making me feel uneasy and they're not balanced, yeah, no, 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 no. I mean, I go out, I, yeah, I've dealt with some beings, and I have no fear. I just, I don't mess around. I
So,
don't.
so when you're in Egypt, you're going to be around lots of beings. So, like, have you been there before?
No, I haven't. I haven't.
It's so full of energy. Oh my gosh. So, like, so what are you going to do? Are you planning to tone and then channel the different various sites? I mean, the different various, like, what, pyramids or the Sphinx, or what are you guys planning to do there with that?
Well, and the thing that I loved about my hair and how he and I align so well is whenever, if I were to plan a excursion, I would need to have room in there that sometimes energy feels off. And sometimes people are telling you like, nope, not today. And I need to be able to trust that and go with that and not be like, nope, it's on their itinerary. And I said on Wednesday, we're going here. And no matter what, like, the hair absolutely feels out everything. So we will have an outline of what we're going. But if the energy feels off, if something is not feeling quite right for that day, we can shift. We're shift a little bit. You know what? Actually, we're gonna go here today and there, or maybe try for tomorrow. So it's all about how are we feeling within that energy, because again, it's not a excursion to go in sightsee. It's an excursion to go within the depths of you and understand how, as a soul embodying this energetic vessel, we can connect with things that once were. So, and part of the excursion is I will be teaching and showing that, and how do we do that, and how do we vet energies, and how do we still allow a channel to come through but yet make them respect and honor our own boundaries.
Yeah, yeah, that is interesting. Wow, that
Yeah.
will be quite the journey for you.
Yeah.
But and for anyone who's going to be with you, that will be quite the journey.
I can tell you the people who have signed up already, it's going to be like very feminine energy, just the divine feminine. I mean, I'm like, honestly, I'm getting goosebumps when I'm talking about. I mean, there are some warrior star women going.
Yeah, I mean, I felt when I saw them, like I felt called. I'm like, I kind of want to go because, like,
Yeah.
I'm Egyptian, so I actually speak Arabic and I know the language.
Wow.
I'm like, yeah, and I haven't been to Egypt in a long time.
Yeah.
It's just one of those trips like you really have to be ready to go. And I have family there and stuff. I wouldn't know what to do. I want to visit them at that point.
Well, I'll tell you this, and I'm like rubbing my nose. It's when the energy is really starting to come around me. Um, one of the other women that are going with me, she's actually coming down to Charleston next month. We're doing a whole workshop together. But she and I were talking about, we have like a year and we want to get our bodies, our physical bodies, in such a great physical, mental, soul shape before we go, so that the energies can go through clearly and there aren't blockages here, or we're do detoxes and get the heavy metals out, because we want to go with a very clean and clear vessel to go in to be able to channel and do the work.
That makes sense. That makes sense. When you do the work, you definitely want to be clear.
Yeah.
Do you get energy work then done from others? Do you constantly have to, do you, I guess, what's what I'm trying to say? It's like energetic hygiene, right? So you practice energetic hygiene, and we only know so much, right, about ourselves. Like we only know what we know, right? So
Yeah.
do you get energy work done sessions by others then at that point sometimes when you feel like you have your blind spots, and do you?
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't do it as much as I probably should. With the amount of work that I'm doing, I should at the very least be getting massages just to get the energy out, more massages. Um, yes, absolutely. There are certain indicators that I know of that I'm like, yep, I need to go see somebody. And because it's while everything comes from within us, it's that dedicated time to sit and really focus. And so I work with Laura Van Tyne. She's absolutely has helped me um, through some stuff. And then there is here locally, there is a man, he is an amazing massage therapist and a Reiki master and a medium. And so I will literally go to him and he'll give me a massage, because usually if I'm at the point I'm getting a massage, it's because whatever's around me has made my body feel so bad. And then he'll do a 30-minute focused Reiki. And I will tell him, I go, I just need you to hold at the crown, like, and let me get in and let me feel out. And every time, if there's an entity attached to me, like whatever, it just boom, it just pops right out and I handle it.
Remind me when you talk about Laura Van Tyne, because I remember reading her in Sedona. And when you do get that many star seeds or that many light workers together, you're going to have all the collective shadows as well show up. And I remember her clearing a lot of reptilian beings at that time in the conference. And what's really interesting about Sedona, though, is Sedona has such a connection to Egypt. And I know, we all know that. It's like there's a Lyran aspect to it as well. It's very ancient. Even when I showed up to Phoenix Airport, like my Arabic is really bad. It's like probably the level of like a 4-year-old. When I showed up to Phoenix Airport and I went to the rental car place and everyone there was Arabic. It's like a very predominant, I guess, immigration from, I guess they come from Arabic Middle Eastern countries and they go to Sedona or the Arizona area because it's a very similar climate to what they're used to. Anyway,
Yeah.
I started talking because I've noticed their names and then I started talking to them in Arabic. And then all of a sudden my Arabic was really good. It was like really fluent. It was like coming out and they're talking to me and I'm like, and then I would meet another guy and he was also, we were just talking in Arabic and I'm like, wow, this is really weird. And I think like, I was like, oh, there's a timeline opening up, a connection to, Egypt. And like Egypt does have a lot of dark energy attached to it as well as a lot of the, beautiful and very powerful legacy it's left in our history.
Yeah.
But with that, there was a lot of dark magic that was happening, and I mean, Egypt is tens of thousands of years long. Where we think of the ancient pharaohs, and that it was a very long span of time. So a lot happened in that time, and some of the pharaohs were not the best. So and they would conjure up a lot of weird stuff. So anyway, I felt like I had that connection. I'm like, wow, there's some things happening. There's a lot of timelines opening up. And so that's when you think about the energies and you start to discern, what energy is coming from where. And it was quite a strange conference because of that. And I remember the conference was very, very, and I think everyone was looking at each other like, who's bringing in these shadows? Where is this all coming from? And like, we don't know because it's like the connection of it could be from multiple timelines and across multiple lifetimes from various different beings that people are attached to. So
Yeah.
that was interesting, and I don't know if you noticed that in Sedona at all, like any of that, like the
I
how
was
the timelines were opening up there.
I was extremely sick the whole time we were in Sedona.
Oh no, so you actually were feeling it on a physiological level, like that energy was.
Well, I had gotten the flu before, like 8 days prior. No, actually, it was 9 days before I left for Sedona, like full on flu. I was so sick, and I just remember like, oh, like counting down the days, like, no, I've got to get better. I have got to get better. Like, what is this? What is this? And I knew it was way more than just a virus, right? I just knew it. And because I was going to do sessions for people and and do what I did, but when I got to Sedona, I canceled anyone who had wanted a session because I'm like, no, like I'm like my head is not attached to my body right now. Like it was like all full of sinuses. And so at any rate, so I canceled all of that because that's not an integrity. And but I finally I focused one night. I was laying in bed at the hotel and I brought my mom and dad, and my little daughter was there for that whole conference. And so she's over there in schoolwork. I'm just laying there and I'm like, what is this? What is this? And I went down into my body and I'm like, where is the root of this coming in? And I literally saw dark magic like leaving me, and I could see it was almost like seeing a spell being spoken into smoke, and it was traveling out me. And my guides literally said, a binding spell. Somebody sent you a binding spell. And I got to the root. I know who sent it. And uh so I cut all of my cords, and I was so depleted. I had my friend who lives in Arizona. I reached out to him. I'm like, so I got to the root. I have a freaking binding spell on me. I've cut it. I go, I'm so exhausted. Can you please help me? Can you please just do some help and just send me some healing? And he said, Abby, put mirrors all around you. And I mean, not physically, but put intentive mirrors so that everything that's being sent your way is going to bounce and go right back to the sender. And he goes, you did good. You cut it, you reclaimed yourself. But now he goes, you got to put the mirrors. And he goes, it's the only way that's going to completely break it. And I literally felt better the next day.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. So it was just binding me, so I couldn't do my work to lower the energy. And when I was there in Sedona, so Laura was dealing with the reptilians. One evening, I spent that night dealing with a gray who was trying to get me to. He was trying to convince me to come home with me.
Hmm.
He even put himself in like little kids, like in little toddlers pajamas, like a little footsies pajamas, and he said, "See how cute! Like I'm so cute. I can come home with you. I want to be a part of your family."
That's funny.
And and I'm like, get out of here, and I was actually outside, like I astral project, like I was outside. I could see the craft outside of our hotel.
So it was at the Hilton Hotel. And do you think it has anything to do with that? Because Hilton is kind of bound a little bit.
Absolutely.
So
Like, yeah, like I've heard such negative things about Hiltons. I like to stay at Airbnbs now.
we stayed in Airbnb during that, and we only felt all of that stuff when we would come to the conference. And we were like, at a certain point, we're like, we're not going to these talks anymore because we don't want to go to the hotel.
Yeah. And you know what? The thing that helped was when I first got to, so I actually showed up to Sedona 4 days early prior to the conference, and all of my like my sisters and their spouses all came out and re-rented an Airbnb. And that house was incredible. And I had amazing skywash experiences there. Salt Merkabas. I was talking to Alexis about them, and Alexis was helping me, understand the layout of Sedona. And so I felt I was able to get really grounded into Sedona that way before the conference happened. And that really, really helped me a lot. So I didn't feel as bad as everybody else was feeling at the hotel.
Okay. Yeah.
I was just like my sickness crud stuff. But then, I cut that and I felt great, and I ended out the conference in a great place. So
Well, that's good that you were able to figure that out. I think not everyone is able to figure that out. It would have been good, people to know. But yeah, I remember that. It was really interesting. And timelines do open up too, and it is interesting to witness that in those groups.
Alexis said Sedona either accepts you or spits you out. There's no in between.
Well, I feel like that about some places that are PowerPoints or portal points. Like sometimes I feel like because with Asheville, it was the same with me. Like I was attracted to Asheville, North Carolina, and if you're familiar with Asheville, North Carolina, it's quite a vortex. Whoa,
Asheville's dark.
Asheville now it can be there's some dark stuff, but like there's a lot of light there too, and unfortunately, it brings with it a lot of the dark. But it's vortexy so much. And it's quite magical. And so I was drawn to it because it really opened me up at the time when I was living there. But I remember I couldn't hold it anymore and I had to leave. And it's just like sometimes those very powerful access vortex points on the planet can do that to us. So some people.
So I want to clarify my statement. I want to clarify my statement for Asheville when I said Asheville is dark. This is what I meant by that. And I tend to do this, and I need to start explaining myself. Asheville is an extremely major vortex positive space on this planet, just like Sedona is. All right. So, but the dark forces understand that. And then so they come in and they try to infiltrate. And then that's what they try to put this layer of dark over top this beautiful aspect.
Right.
So Asheville has tons of amazing energy there. There's like a huge Sasquatch, Bigfoot, there's a lot of them there. I did a vortex tour in Asheville. So this is why I think those places, instead of being like, oh yeah, nope, dark overtook it, I'm not going there. No, we need to go and completely clear that crap out, because it's a beautiful space and we need to reclaim it from them. And even though like I'm sitting there, like I'm like just projecting, I'm looking at Asheville right now. It's like I see this dark layer, but it's not even thick. It's not even heavy. It's just like this mist that's so easily, that we could so easily just and dissipate away from there.
Yeah, and I think a lot of light workers and grid workers and starseeds and we get called there for that reason, and that makes sense. Just like when we get sick, right? And because we have a binding as a person, it's similar to an area. And I think some people get called to be the keepers of that area too. And I think Sedona has a bunch of keepers there, and I think a lot of the keepers there are Lyran because and ancient connected to the Earth grid. Um, so I guess then we're kind of coming up on time here. Thank you for this really cool conversation. Is there anything else you want to share, like or talk about before we kind of end our time together today?
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of okay. So I was pulling the card. That's why I looked down. So I don't know why. Like I've had these Starseed cards for the like 4 years. The Rebecca Campbell ones, and
Mm.
I've never been drawn to pull them.
Oh, wow.
And the past 2 weeks, all I do is pull these cards.
Wow.
Like I have been so called to pull them, and I've been having amazing reads. So at any rate, the card that came, I'm so bad at doing this. I'm not fancy. Called Soul Gifts and Training. It's time to step up.
Nice.
And so I want to leave with this message. And I know, and I dropped a YouTube thing today called on my conscious chat, and it's called um like what does it mean to be soul tired? Right. And I think the what I want to share is I think that a lot of us have been doing so much work for so long, and we're coming to this, sometimes we come to these times where we're soul tired. And it is an aspect of like, these people are never going to get it. They don't even care what we're doing. We're pouring our lives, we're pouring our energy into all these cups of wanting to be service to others, and we're not, it's just not reciprocating. What are we even here, like what are we even doing? And it's just, so I really just want to share, like, don't give up. Just don't give up. I know that there is coming a time where we are going to be in such dire need, dire need, that it's going to, it will all make sense what we've been doing. And even if it's just helping to explain to people, just having these simple conversations, these little chats that they can, you are starting this podcast and you're putting this out into the field. It's creating that ripple, and more people that are out just talking about this and helping people understand we're so much more than all of this. So
That's beautiful. Actually, I feel like I needed to hear that today. So thank you. Yeah.
just keep going. Just keep going. I'm very fortunate. I have an Andromedan aspect of myself. And she started coming to me, oh my goodness, over 2 years ago, almost 3 years now. And I was really, really in a bad place. I was in a bad place because I was just, all I was seeing were children being hurt and nothing changing and on this planet. And um, I just, an aspect of like, there's nothing I could do. I don't know what else to do here. And I put out like a beacon call to every single dimension. I did focused. I just sat on the floor of my bathroom crying, and I just put out this like this, like going up, and I went dimension up to each dimension and just putting out this ripple of a call with a message embedded. They're hurting the children. They are hurting the children. Like, who is protecting them? And I got to just such a place where I was defeated. I felt defeated, and this Andromedan aspect of myself stepped in, and she walked right up to me, and she looked down, and she just put her hand down out to me, and she said, keep going. And every time I start to feel soul tired and Like I'm not making any difference. And what am I even doing? Am I wasting my time? She steps right back in again and she just puts her hand down and she just looks at me and she said, keep going. And that's what gives me the power to keep on going, because it's so much more than just us. And I know that she has my back and she's helping me through this too.
Well, that's important to keep going, but it is really hard when you see so much and you feel so much atrocity. And it's like, what can I practically do? Sometimes some of us think about that. What can I actually do about any of this?
Yeah.
Besides
So I'll give you,
the
I'm going to share a story. I actually want to share a story. I want to share a story before we end this in terms of like, what can we do? I think I was given this glimpse into what I'm doing sometimes when I'm sleeping. I think I was given this glimpse because it does make me feel like I am doing something when I don't realize. So I was just in light. I was just a light being. Okay, right? And I was in this, it looked to be like a trailer home. I don't know where I was. And I was just like floating down and I went to the left and I went to a door and I used my abilities, my like, and I just popped the door open very quietly, but I ledged it and I could hear what was going on inside that room. And I knew that it was a dad and I knew it was a little girl. I'm not going to go more than that. And then I immediately I went down the hall and I went into the bedroom. The door was open and I floated into the bedroom and the mom was asleep. And I went down to her ear and I went, wake up. You need to wake up. And then I just dissipated and I was out.
Wow.
And a couple of days later, I was talking to one of my friends. I go, what was that?
I'm getting like chills. Like,
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I go, what was that? And I knew that the reason why that door popped open when the mom woke up, because then she could hear it. Because it's in the middle of the night. She was asleep. She didn't know. And my friend said, that sounds like that's the work that's the work of an angel. That's angelic work. And right when she said that, I literally heard my guide said to me, it's because you heard her prayer.
wow.
And so I don't know why it makes me emotional. And so it like I started crying when I heard that. I think that's, when we wake up and we're so tired and we're like, God, I feel like I worked all night long, but I have no idea what I did.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us are doing work like that. So keep going. We're
Thanks.
doing something.
That was really that was really good. Thank you so much. All right, for anyone who wants to, get in touch with Abby or to follow her work, I'm going to put all your information below this video. And again, it's just such a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on and talking to us today.
No, thank you. Thanks for holding space for it and putting this out and making ripples.
And thanks for everyone who watched this. So many blessings to you. And so much love.
Thank you so much.